Welcome to our program, which is titled How to Properly Condition Flowers. We thought that this would be a great program to have before Garden Day, and we have some of our professional florists with us today, Joyce Childress, Marion Zimmerman, and Carolyn Helfrich, who are going to be putting on this wonderful educational program for everybody. So after saying that, I'd like to turn it over to the professionals.
Well, thank you, Rennie, for that generous introduction, especially with me. I would like to talk about how we go about properly cutting flowers to be conditioned for our arrangements. And I thought maybe if we talked about April 24th, be sure you mark your calendar. That's the Sunday that all will be out in our yards or our neighbors' yards gathering flowers. So what we're going to take with us on that day is, first of all, a clean bucket. Now, if you have to plan ahead, a good way to soak the bucket overnight is to use a quart of water and a half cup of borax, and just put that in the multi-purpose container, multi-purpose bucket, and then use a stiff brush in the morning. So when you go out with your clean container, and frequently I just put glass jars into my bucket or whatever I'm using to contain the jars. But you also need to condition, to clean the tool that you're going to cut with. So I have my faithful little clipper, and before I go out, I like to sterilize that with a little bit of rubbing alcohol. And also, one of my favorite scissors is this Cutco scissors. So I'm making sure that there are no bacteria on the clipper that I'm going to use. I've made sure that my bucket and containers are clean, and then I head outside. Now, what we're going to do when we're outside is we're going to cut on a slant all the stems that we're going to put into our bucket of water. The reason we're cutting on a slant is that gives us more surface area for the plant to absorb moisture. And an important thing to remember is put the plant in water as soon as possible, because once you've cut that stem, you've interrupted the flow of water up to the flower. So a vacuum forms, and into that vacuum goes air if you can't get it in water as soon as possible. So after the stems are cut, they're in water, then we're ready to think about arranging. So from here, having said that on April 24th, we're all going to be in our gardens cutting for Garden Day arranging, which is Monday, and then of course Tuesday is the day of the garden tour. Wonderful event for all of us. So now I'm going to let Marion and Carolyn be very specific about how to condition plants.
Hello everybody. I said to Carolyn and Joyce earlier, why do we condition flowers? And that's a question so many people who are new to this say, why? It's to hydrate your flower, be it a woody stem, a soft stem, and for Garden Day particularly, they need to be well hydrated. Now, there are several techniques and there are many different flowers. So from that point of view, there's quite a lot to learn. But if you take things like daffodils, and these are the small tete-a-tete, we're a little early in the season, so there aren't any really available at the moment. Carolyn brought these in this morning. I've removed this from the plant. And when you do so, and you cut daffodils, there's a very clear liquid that oozes out of this stem, and that actually is poisonous to other flowers. So always condition narcissus, daffodils, jonquils, thank you Carolyn, in clear water, tepid water, and on their own. Once they have taken up fresh water, they will not be poisonous to other flowers, believe it or not. So
that's a great tip. Good to know.
So continue to cut them and keep them in water, and probably about that depth. Some plant material will begin to deteriorate if they're in water that is too deep. And we can touch on that later. So there I have taken apart this, and now the bulbs can be planted in the garden.
I'm gonna wait for that one to bloom up.
Oh, a little bad. Now,
Let's just
tulips. These are really interesting creatures because once they've been conditioned, excuse me, I will just say, if I may, you buy them like this in a bunch, and they've all been cut on the same level. So when you come home from the store, having bought your tulips, you would remove the paper that they are in. Generally speaking, you would remove any leaf that would go down into the water. So you take that one off and you cut it at an angle, as Joyce said earlier, and you put that in water. And again, remove this leaf, cut it at an angle and put them in water. And you would continue. Now, years ago, we always used a flower preservative, and when you buy your flowers, you will often find
It wasn't actually, there were no ones in, it wasn't one in there.
there isn't one in
No.
here. There's plenty over there. Thank you. You will often find you get packets like this, and it used to be a cardinal rule. You always opened it and you poured it into the water. Well, these days, we're not using these chemicals as much. Would you agree?
I totally agree. And do you use them on
No,
bulb plants?
no, I
Yeah.
don't. And I don't use them on garden flowers either. So it's a moot point whether you choose to use this or not. I'll leave that down there. So I'm going to continue with the tulip. Now, the interesting thing with tulips, they will grow in the container you've put them in and arrange them. They will grow once they've been arranged. And I have actually tested it. Not only do they curve beautifully, that head can grow out by 4 inches.
Wow.
So it can completely destroy a line arrangement. And I wouldn't recommend tulips for line arrangements from that point of view. So you can continue, and I can mix the 2 colours because they're of the same genre. Now the other thing, I have an amaryllis sitting here above my head. I think they're beautiful.
Can I interject just a second?
Certainly.
So remember, for Garden Day, we'll have all the tulips we want from Bloomia. Werner Jensen has agreed to just let us have what we want. Think about lots of tulips in your arrangements, and we will feature tulips along with our magnolia state flower too. So
Great.
That's
so
wonderful.
you won't have to buy your tulips. Just
Thank you. That would be
yes,
wonderful, won't
it
it?
will be wonderful.
They are so generous.
They are so
They really
generous.
are.
I remember last year,